no, I don't want to do that. I haven't got much space here. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Tra la 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 la, tra la la lee, tra la 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 la. How are you? Can you hear the thunder in the background? So if you hear heavy panting when you don't see me on the screen, it's not me, okay? It's my dog Mo. We're in the garage because there's lots of cool hiding places in here. We've got this big old thunderstorm going on. And Mo doesn't like it. She's all scaredy cat. So sadly, she's with me heavy breathing. So it's really not me. Hey, Scott made it today. Yeah. Sounds so glad to see you, Scott. It's nice chatting with you the other day, or emailing with you the other day. All right. So I've got some stories. I've got some pictures. How many have I got today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've only got 6 pictures. So today's story is going to be kind of short and sweet, but it'll be fine. Oh, and Renee Badger, if you want to send me some pictures, you can do. I would love to include your pictures in this. Sandy, if you see this, then tell Mrs. Badger that she should definitely send me some some images. I'm afraid you'd already... Yes, but I haven't said anything yet, Sarah. I've just been like doing the hi thing because I was sitting here waiting and the thunder was roaring. Hey, Russell. Russell says hi to you, Scott, too. So there we go. Well, we got a little crowd here. It's great. Oh, let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. And we don't need that anymore. That's Friday with Friends. That's the one I want. There we go. So this Friday, in 2 days' time, I'm going to be I'm going to be sitting down with my friend Laura Sims. And Laura Sims is a great person. She is a phenomenal storyteller. She's a diva of storytelling. And she is running this year the Hans Christian Andersen Storytelling Festival in New York City in Central Park at the Hans Christian Andersen statue. Except it's not happening there this year. It's virtual, online, every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. So if you, I'm checking on my dog. If you go to the Hans Christian Andersen Storytelling Center Facebook page, it'll stream to there. They also have a YouTube page. It'll stream live to there too. And you can hear people from all over the world, which is really exciting. They tell Hans Christian Andersen stories. And I'll tell you something. If you are like how I used to be not long ago, and like, Hans Christian Andersen, really? I'm not sure. Not a big fan. Well, I've been working with Laura Sims for this festival, and I am amazed at the stories that he wrote. You know, we all know The Emperor's New Clothes. We all know The Little Match Girl. We all know The Little Mermaid and how she really died at the end. It's true. She floated up to heaven in effervescent bubbles. She did. I'm sorry to break that to your kids, but she didn't survive. Anyhow, hey, Pete. It's good to see you. Got all Joey, yay! So this morning I was looking for my... Well, actually, it wasn't this morning. It was about 10 minutes ago. I was looking for my kazoo because I was going to do some kazooing, and I was kind of short on time and I couldn't find it. And then I thought, you know what? You don't need a kazoo. All you need is a comb and some parchment paper. And I got the parchment paper and I decided to give it a try. And so... I thought, well, it sounds all right, but it's not great. And so I got some tissue paper, because I got some tissue paper with my filters for my light, because it's an orange light, and with a blue filter on it makes it look normal. And this is much better. That sounds so out of tune. So it's great, if you're stuck at home and you haven't got a kazoo, you don't need one. All you need is a comb and some parchment paper or some tissue paper. Tissue paper works best. I mean, not the tissues that, not that kind of tissue paper, because that would just, it'd be stuck. If you got a hairy face like mine, you'd end up with it stuck all over your beard. So anyway, Sandy, there was a message for you at the beginning. Tell Renee that she needs to send me pictures, okay? All right, you're on it. Good. So, she's all, I don't like the storm. I don't like the storm. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories today, and I don't know which stories to tell you. I've got the cleverest tune, which I've been recording so many stories. I don't know what I've done here and what I haven't, except I kind of do. But it feels like I've done it here before, but maybe I didn't, because I've been writing them down. And then there's Jack John, the story of Jack John, which is a funny story. And there's the Hans Christian Andersen story of Cupid. Actually, I was gonna, because I told that last Saturday. And then the Woman of the Sea, which I might do for my buddy Liam, because Liam likes the silky stories, and it's a silky story. And there's The Woman Who Flummoxed the Fae, which is another Scottish story, because I was thinking of also doing a Scottish story for my Scottish friends. And then there was The Golden Ball. I think I'm going to start with The Golden Ball. Golden Ball is a really good story. And it's actually one of the child ballads. And this guy called James Child, he collected a lot of ballads in the 1700s. And he put them down on paper, and they are known as the Child Ballad Collection. And it's insane. And the number of ballads that he collected and saved for us, which is like phenomenal. And this story, it's actually a folk tale that has one of the child ballads butted on. The picky princess who does... Oh, I could do that one. I can do that one, Joey. That's a fun story. But I'm going to tell the Golden Ball right now, which is very different. And it's like the child ballad was just like shoved on the end of it. But it's such a... I mean, A, it's a really good child ballad. And B, it's a really good story. Or the other way around. A, it's a really good story. And B, it's a really good child ballad. I don't know. But once upon a time, a very long time ago, and it was probably this time of year when all the fairs are on, and it wasn't COVID-19 time, it wasn't coronavirus time, so people are actually allowed to go to state fairs and things like that, and agricultural fairs. And these two girls in these long ago days, they went to this fair, and there were people playing music, and the girls danced, of course. There was a big old Ferris wheel, so there were people playing on the Ferris wheel. There were, those, like, you throw balls and you've got to get them through the holes. There were all sorts of games there. And of course, there was all the cattle and the other livestock that was there to see, including bunny rabbits, right? And they had a fabulous most of the day there. And they were making their way home in the afternoon. And they were laughing and joking with each other, these two sisters, about how much fun they'd had. And they were giggling at some of the boys, because there was a couple of boys that they liked. And there was a couple of boys that tried dancing with them, and they were really rubbish at dancing, but they didn't care because they were kind of cute. When a man came from behind these trees along the side of the road and stepped in front of them. Now, this man was a strange-looking man. I mean, not strange like this, but he had a gold hat on his head, and he wore a gold jacket and a gold shirt. And he had a gold waistcoat and a gold tie, gold trousers and golden shoes. He had his hands behind his back, and he bowed a little bit towards the two girls and said, "Well, how do you do, young ladies? How are you today?" Oh, we're fine, thank you. Yes, we're fine. And you've been to the fair, I take it, from the smiles and the giggles on your faces. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. I have a question for you both. I have a gift that I'd like to give to someone, and I'd like to give it to you two. And then he brought his hands forward, and in his hands were two golden orbs. I would like to give these to you, young ladies. Well, the eldest girl, she was a smart cookie, and she was like, well, I really don't think we should take those. I mean, they look like they're made of gold. Oh, they are absolutely made of gold. Oh, sister, can we have them, please? Can we? Oh, we'd never be able to afford those. Well, how much do they cost? Well, they will cost you nothing if you take them and look after them carefully. Well, what do you mean? Well, they will cost you nothing at all if I give them to you. What's the catch? Well, the catch is, if you lose them, then you lose your life. That's a very high price to pay. Oh, come on, sissy, we won't lose them, they're made of gold, come on, please, 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 please. And she pulled on her sister's arm, and her sister wouldn't at first agree. But her little sister, she was so persistent. All right. They took the golden orbs and they looked at them. They stared at their faces that warped and distorted. They looked at the trees that reflected in the gold and how they also were warped and distorted. And they looked up to thank the man, but he had vanished. Well, they loved those golden balls. They played with those golden balls a lot. And they would clean them when they'd finished, and they would set them on a little cushion, and they would leave them on the shelf, nice and safe, until they went to play with them the next time. And that's how it was. And the girls got older and older and older. Well, the oldest one, she stopped playing with the ball. But the youngest one, she loved it. And you know how things are when they're brand new? You clean them all the time, you look after them, you put them in their best place so you can see them all the time. And that's how it was at the beginning. But as time went on and these girls got older, they weren't always put away. They definitely weren't cleaned every time they were finished with. They got a little bit scratchy, a little bit denty. Well, the youngest sister, she met this boy and she was trying to impress him, and so she took the golden ball with her, and as they were walking, she was throwing the ball up in the air and catching it. And she was talking to him, and he was talking to her, and she was throwing the ball up and catching it. And she was throwing it higher and higher and higher and higher and higher until she threw it over an iron paling, an iron fence, a tall, black-painted iron fence. And on the other side of the fence, the hill went down. And she looked at her bow and she said, "You have to go and get my ball. You got to go and get my ball." He said, "Okay, I will, don't worry." "No, you have to get it now, otherwise I shall lose my life." "What do you mean lose?" "All right, I'll go and get it." And he immediately threw himself at the iron wall, at the iron railing, climbed up over the top and dropped down on the other side and ran after the ball. And the ball was rolling faster and faster and faster. Her face was pressed up against the railings, watching her bow run, getting closer and closer to the ball, but the ball was still too far away for him to leap at and grab hold of. And at the bottom of the hill, the ball bounced inside a house, over the lintel of the house and inside. And just as the young boy was about to follow it, this old woman stepped in front of him. "Where do you think you're going?" "Oh, my friend, she dropped her ball and it rolled into your house. I was wondering if I could go and go inside and get the ball." "If you go inside my house, you shall have to spend 3 days in my house, 3 nights." "Please, you have to get my ball back, please. I will lose my life if I don't get it." "Okay." And the old woman stepped aside, and the young lad moved in. He started looking around. Couldn't find the ball anywhere. And when he sat down at the lady's invitation, as he tried to think about somewhere, "I shall show you to your room," said the woman. "Follow me." And they went up the stairs. And she opened a door, and there was a small room. There was a large fireplace in this small room. You could almost stand up in it. You'd have to bend down like this, but you could pretty much stand up in this fireplace. It was nice and wide, and there was coals and bits of wood there. On the mantelpiece, there was a box of matches and a candle. There was a small bookcase with some books on it. And there was a bed in the room, and next to the bed there was a little table, a little nightstand, if you will. Bedside table, whatever you want to call it. And the young man sat on the bed and tried to think of where that ball could have gone. He'd looked everywhere downstairs where it might have been. Well, the day was coming to an end. Darkness started to come, and he thought he'd read a little bit before he went to sleep. So he went over to the bookshelf, took one of the books and opened it up and started reading. It got darker and darker, and so he set the book down, went and took the candle off the mantelpiece and the matches and lit the candle. And he set the candle in the candlestick that was on the bedside table. And he read for a while until his eyes got tired, and then he closed the book. It was dark outside. He didn't climb under the covers, he just lay on top of the bed. He was warm enough in his clothes, and it was this time of year, so it wasn't cold outside. He didn't need to light the fire. And then he started to hear these sounds. screeches, calls. They got worse and worse and worse. Cackles, howls. They were coming from outside his window. He stood up off the bed and walked over to the window and looked outside. There were all these monsters, ghouls and goblins out there. Creatures of all sorts. Eyes bouncing around. Some people had ears missing. Scarred faces. All sorts of strange monsters were out there. And the young man, he looked down, looked at them all screaming up at him, and he opened up the windows and he said, "You got to do a lot better than to scare me away from here." And he laughed and closed the window and went back and sat down on the bed. Threw his legs up, laid down, and closed his eyes. But then he heard something was coming up the stairs. And then something stopped right outside of his door. The young man, in the darkness of his room, carefully and quietly got off the bed. Then he went and stood behind the door, next to the bookshelf. His heel hit something against the wall, and he looked down. And in the moonlight that was coming in through the window, he saw that there was a sword there. And so he picked it up quietly and stood, waiting for the door to open. And sure enough, the door opened up. And this huge giant of a man came. He bent his way into the room. He went over to the bed and slammed his hand down on it. He ripped the sheets away. Huh? Where's he gone? He lifted the bed up. He's gone. The creature, the giant, he went over to the window, opened up the window, called outside. "Hey, I think he must have run away because I can't see him here." Well, the young man, he came up behind the door with a sword raised and brought it down, and he cut the creature in two. Well, the top half went straight out of the window, crashed down with all the creatures. They howled and screamed even more. It seemed that they were very upset that their friend was now in two pieces. Well, the young man looked out the window and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, do you want the rest of him?" And so he picked up the legs and the waist and threw those out through the window too. And then the creatures screamed even more and then ran off with the two halves of the body into the night. Well, the young man just laughed, shut the window, and went back down and laid on the bed, but he kept the sword in his hand over his shoulder. He wasn't bothered again that night. Well, the next morning he got up and he looked all the way through the house downstairs again. And he even made his way up onto the next floor. And he looked around, he couldn't find anything that even resembled the golden ball. And so, same thing happened again. He went up to his room and he started reading the book. He thought maybe he could finish it before he actually found the golden ball and left, hoping that it would be before the 3 nights. He was already halfway through the book. He closed his eyes, went to sleep after snuffing out the candle and putting the book down. And then he heard that sound. Something was coming up the stairs. And then something stopped outside his room. The young man grabbed the sword and went and hid behind the door again and waited with the sword raised. And the door slowly opened and that giant came in. He looked behind the door and there was our young man. "See, I knew you'd be hiding behind the door." Well, the young man, he just brought the sword down and cut the monster's head off. The head rolled across the floor. But the body did not fall. The body started swiping with its arms. And the young man's dodging and ducking. And then the head was like, "Where are you? Where are you?" The head had almost rolled under the bed. The young man's trying not to kick the head or trying to avoid the head. And he's trying to avoid the swinging arms. Well, the creature eventually hit a wall and found the wall and started to make its way along the wall until it found the fireplace. And then it stepped into the fireplace and he heard this creature climbing up the fireplace. He then picked up the head and then he kicked it as hard as he could up the chimney. He could hear it going. all the way up the chimney. You better have your head back. You don't want to be lost with that. This was the same giant that he cut in half the night before. I mean, what the whack? It was crazy. And then he went back to his bed, lay down with the sword on his shoulder, closed his eyes, and went to sleep and wasn't bothered again. Well, the next day, he looked all through the house. He took everything out of cupboards and drawers, let them on the side. He looked at the back of cupboards. He looked behind chairs and tables. He pretty much emptied everything out on the first floor and put everything back in. And he was just about to start on the second floor when it was too dark. And so he went up to his room, lit the candle, sat down in bed and read for a while. And when his eyes got tired, put the candle out, set the book down, and closed his eyes with the sword next to him. That time, there was no up the stairs. There were no screeches or howls from outside, but instead there were noises from under his bed. It was as if there were some creatures beneath his bed that were playing some sort of game. Well, he took the matches and lit the candle again and left it on the bedstand and peered down. Every once in a while, a scrawny little arm would fly out and shoot back in again, and a leg would fly out and shoot back in again. These were the goblins and the ghouls that had been downstairs outside the house the night, 2 nights ago. And then a smile came on his face. The next time an arm shot out, he cut it off. Ow! A leg came out, he cut that off. More arms and he cut them off. He was a de-limbing machine. Anything that stuck itself out from under the bed, he lopped it off. Until the creatures had obviously had enough, they gave their final scream. They grabbed most of the arms and the legs that they could find and ran off, those that could. And they carried some of their friends with them as well. Well, the young man was still a little bit concerned about what might be under the bed that night. And so he took his sword and swept underneath it. But as he swept underneath it, making sure there's nothing else under there, he heard a tink. And out came the golden ball. There it was. The golden ball. He didn't need to stay anymore. And so, keeping hold of the sword, of course, he ran out of the house. He ran back up the hill, and in the moonlit evening, he jumped over that paling, over that fence, and back to his sweetheart's house. But when he got there, he'd heard that a man dressed in gold, with a whole bunch of soldiers, had found him. And they had found her, and taken her down to York to be hung the next morning. But I got the ball, he said. No matter. Apparently, the first night, the woman had been about to go to bed, and the man in gold had showed up with all these soldiers at the house. And so what she had done was she'd stepped outside onto the balcony of her bedroom and hidden out there, and they hadn't found her. The second night, she'd hidden inside the chimney, inside the fireplace, and the soldiers hadn't found her there either. But the third night, they'd found her, and they'd taken her to York to be hung. Now, there she was. Scaffold was being built for her. She could be hung by the neck. It was a terrible thing. When the town folks heard about this, there was no television or radio in those days. This was the form of entertainment, right? See someone hung or beheaded. Woohoo! Kind of gruesome, but that's how it was back then. I don't know. So the townsfolk started to arrive. The scaffolding was finished. The cart with the young woman inside it took her to the scaffolding, and she was led up the steps onto the platform where the great beam hung, where the rope came down from. Did you hear the thunder? And the hangman with his bag over his head with the slits for eyes said, "So, Missy, if you wants to say your prayers, if you believes that sort of stuff, then now's the good time to say your prayers." The girl looked down at her feet, and she looked up. But when she looked up, she saw what looked like her father riding on a horse. And she called out, "Father, Father, have you come to rescue me? Father, do you have the golden ball, the ball to set me free?" But when he pulled up on his horse, he looked at his girl and said, "Sadly, I could not find the ball, the golden ball, the ball to set you free. Sadly I've come to see you hung from the gallows tree. Well, missy, sorry your father wasn't able to save you, so, do you want to say your prayers? She wiped a tear from her eye and said, No, no, no. My mother writes to me. Mother, do you have the ball that set me free? When her mother got there, she turned around and said, No, my darling. I do not have the golden ball, the ball to set you free. Sadly, I've come to see you hung from the gallows tree. Well, missy, sorry, but you need to say your prayers now. Her sister arrived. Sister, do you have the golden ball, the ball to set me free? She said the same thing as her mother and father had said. She did not have the ball to set her free. Look, if I'm not paid by the hour, right? I'm only paid per beheading, you see. Now, if I was paid by the hour, I'd be fine with all your brothers and sisters, your aunts and uncles coming. Maybe they got the ball, maybe they don't. But, I'm not paid by the hour. It's only beheading. And, I've got things to do. I've got my own little girl to look after. I mean, not in the same way that I'm looking after you, if you see what I mean. We're going to go to the ice cream shop this afternoon. So if you're going to say your prayers, say your prayers. If you're not, I'm afraid I'm going to have to hang you. And he put the rope around the girl's neck. And just then, her beau galloped towards him. And in his hand, high above his head, was the golden ball. My sweetheart writes to me, and you have the golden ball, the ball to set me free. Well, the man in gold had been there, watching all of this, and the smile on his mouth had been getting wider and wider and wider. But when he saw the beau with the golden ball in his hand, the smile started to drop from his face. My sweetheart has come to set me free. He has the golden ball, and I will not hang from this gallows tree. Well, you're a lucky missy, aren't you? And the hangman took the noose from her neck. The man in gold, he vanished in a cloud of black smoke. The beau presented the golden ball to his girl, and they made their way home. She, of course, riding behind him. And I really hope that they didn't fall out, because they were still young. And I really hope that they had a really good life together. But we don't know. But what I do know is that if you ever see a man dressed in gold who offers you a golden ball, no matter how good it looks, just remember how distorted your face looks inside it and say no. And that's the story of the golden ball. The end. Did you like that story? Did you like the thunder in the story? Could you hear the thunder? Oh, yeah. So you did hear it. Good. Scott said he heard it. Woohoo! And the delimbing machine. Yes. Hey, Scott. Griswold. It's good to see you. Woohoo! Not paid by the hour. Yes, I know, Joey. I like those little things that I slip in. I hope you do too. All right, so what time have we got? Where's my ticker? There it is. Ooh, that was a long story, wasn't it? I could tell you another one. Do you want to hear another story? Oh, there's one of my best buddies right here. Hey, Miss Snark. I'm glad you got the shivers. That's the whole idea. So I told this story last weekend, and actually Miss Snark there, she made a couple of suggestions, which I really liked, and I've been wondering about, like, the poet in this story. And I was kind of like, I don't know, there's got to be something more to it. And I think, Miss Snark, I think I have it. You can tell me afterwards. Not in the comments, though. Please, thank you. This story is a Hans Christian Andersen story called The Naughty Boy. And it was when I first started helping out with the Hans Christian Andersen Storytelling Festival. I bought this book of the complete collection of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales and stories. And I haven't read all of it yet. I've been dipping in and out. And there are some really good stories in there. Like I was saying at the beginning, they're not all, and they died and went to heaven, or, oh, they were so lost in love. It wasn't all that. There's some really, really good stories in there. But when I saw The Naughty Boy, I was like thinking, well, I'm a naughty boy. I'm going to definitely read this story. And then when I needed to learn one, it was one of the stories that I learned. And this is the story of the naughty boy. But it doesn't start with a naughty boy. It starts with an old, old man just like me. And this old, old man, he was a kind man. And he was loved by the people that lived around him, the people that knew him. They loved him dearly. And this old man, he was a poet. And he would write such beautiful words. He would write about the birds in the trees, but he'd also talk about the conversations that the trees had with the wind, and they kept those conversations secret from the birds. He wrote about the brook and how it danced over the rocks and the conversations that they had. He wrote about love and life. He wrote about the pitfalls and the pinnacles of life. He wrote about all sorts of things. Well, one day, it could have been a day like today, raining, it was cold. It's not cold, I don't think, but this day it was cold. And the old man was sat in his big comfy chair next to the fire, stoking the fire, poking it with a poker. And he stood up and shuffled over and cut some apples up, and he put the apples onto a prong. And he started toasting the apples. Have you ever done that? Toasted apples over a fire? It's really yummy. Makes the outside, it's kind of like marshmallows. The outside gets hard and crunchy, and the soft middle still. And so there he was. He's roasting his apples. I nearly said marshmallows there. There he was, roasting and toasting his apples. There was a cup of tea that was brewing on the sideboard. And he was thinking to himself, well, I wouldn't want to be outside on a night like this. Oh, no, it's terrible. It's windy. It's cold and wet. Oh, it's a terrible, terrible night. The rain rattled the shutters. The wind shook the house. And just as the man was about to stand up to get his cup of tea, there was a knock at the door. Well, who on earth would be visiting me at this time of night in this weather? And so he shuffled over to the front door and opened it up. But when he looked out, there was nobody standing there. But as he turned and looked down, as one does usually when one shuts the door, there was a little boy there. And he was quite naked. Yep, I said that. He was naked. Well, he was quite naked. He had a bow over one arm and a quiver of arrows over the other. And he was standing there looking drenched, water pouring down his face and over his shoulders. Well, come in, boy, come in. You'll freeze to death outside. You'll catch your death of cold. Go and stand by the fire and dry yourself off. Go on, shoot. Go dry yourself off by the fire. I shall get some towels and blankets. And the old man went and got some towels and blankets. And the young boy rubbed his hair so all the rain came out. It turned out that it bounced right back up again. It was nice and curly. And then the old man came with the towels and started to rub him down, let the boy finish himself off. And when the boy was quite dry, he wrapped him up in a couple of blankets and sat him on his knees next to the fire. He grabbed one of the pokers and put another piece of apple on the end of it and started toasting it. I don't know what you were doing out there tonight. It's such cold, horrible weather. Here, eat this. This will warm you up. The little boy took the apple and ate it, and it began to warm him up on the inside. The little boy was fidgeting. He jumped down off the old man's legs and ran around the room. Well, you're quite a little sprite, aren't you? What's your name, and what are you doing outside so late at night? He stood up to pour some tea. Oh, my name is Cupid, said the little boy. My name's Cupid. Oh, and those are your bow and arrows. Well, it's a shame the rain got on them. It would have spoilt the wood, and all the colours of your arrows have run together to make brown. What a shame. Oh no, I'm sure my bow's fine. And the little boy picked up his bow and flexed the wood. And then he twanged the string. Oh no, see? It's fine. And then he picked up one of the arrows and he notched it into the bow and let the arrow fly. And it hit the old man right into his heart. The old man fell over backwards. What have you done? You shot me in the heart with one of your arrows, you wicked child, you naughty, naughty boy. Well, Cupid ran to the window and looked outside. Oh, look, it stopped raining and the moon's full. And without saying anything else, he grabbed the rest of his arrows, threw the quiver over his shoulder, and with the bow in his other hand, opened up the door and ran outside. The old man shot through the heart with this arrow of love from Cupid. You wicked boy, you naughty boy, I shall write about you, I shall warn people about you. Well, Cupid, he ran off. The old man didn't see him ever again. Cupid would hide up in trees in the park and shoot his bow and arrows at people walking past, not caring who he hit. Some people were wounded by these arrows of love quite badly. Others fared much better. He would go into theatres and hang from the chandeliers from the lights up in the ceiling, and he would shoot both the audience and the artists. He didn't care. He'd shoot everybody, willy-nilly. He would disguise himself sometimes as a schoolboy and pretend to be friends with some of the school kids. And then when they least expected it, he would shoot them with his arrows. Love's first strike. It usually hurts. Your parents and your grandparents, they were hit by Cupid's arrows too. You should ask them what it felt like. What happened when they got struck by Cupid's arrows? Oh, the old man. I hadn't forgotten about him. I know you thought I had, but I hadn't. Well, the old man, he found that he fell in love with words on a much deeper level. And he did write poems to warn people about Cupid. He wrote hundreds of poems to warn people about Cupid. But do we listen? No, we don't. And some of us are really hurt badly. And some of us, we fare a lot better. Because Cupid's still out there with his darts of love. And there are still poets warning us about the trials and tribulations of it. The Naughty Boy. Retold by me, written by Hans Christian Andersen. Hope you liked it. All right, so I'm going to look at the time. Excellent. So that's a 5-minute story. All right, so here we have all the pictures, all shuffly up. Oh, by the way, in case you were wondering what this is, that is a burn from the iron. I was ironing my shirts the other day, and as I was ironing my shirts, thank you, Sandy. And as I was ironing my shirts, you've got to thank Hans Christian Andersen. There are some really good stories that he's written, and they sound so much better told. And if you get the chance, if you're not doing anything at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, Eastern Time, USA and Canada, then I would highly recommend visiting Hans Christian Andersen Storytelling Center Facebook page or YouTube page and joining some of the wonderful storytellers, because some of the stories, when they're told, they're really, really good. Here's my hat full of pictures. Once upon a time, Julia, starstruck eyes. This is Julia, boink, and this is also Julia, because this is a self-portrait. But what I want to know is, who is she following? She's following somebody. I wonder if it's one of her siblings. Who knows? Well, it was coronavirus time still, and Julia was fed up and bored. And so she decided to follow her dad. It was her dad she decided to follow, because her dad, he wears a lot of white T-shirts, he does. Usually have the Grateful Dead stuff on them. No, I'm making that up. And so Julia decided to follow her dad out, because he was going to do some work in the yard. And because it was a nice sunny day, unlike today, she put her sunglasses on and a fancy shirt with all these different colours. Whoop, whoop. Stars and everything. And off she went. And as she travelled, she saw this strange looking bird thing. I believe it's called a kitsune. Now, I think it's a Pokemon thing, to be honest. But we know what kitsunes really are. The real kitsunes. And we're going to pretend that this is a real kitsune, because a real kitsune is a fox. It's a spirit fox. And it's a woman spirit fox. And when Julia saw this spirit fox, and her dad was like nose down in the rose bushes checking for grubs and stuff, she thought, it's time to have an adventure. And the kitsune jumped, off it went running, and little Julia, she ran after it. And as she was running, they ran for a long time, and they came to this house. Now, this house was drawn by Felicity all the way up in Scotland. Hello, Felicity, how are you doing now? That was a terrible Scottish accent. I apologise for that. And outside the house was a cat, and the cat was called Felicity. And the sun was shining still, because we can see the sun right there. And so the cat that was sitting outside decided It is a Japanese. Didn't I say that was a Japanese fox? Oh, from Liam. Yes, it's true. There are some great, there's some very adult white fox stories. And so off and off and off they ran. They ran and ran and ran and ran and ran and ran some more. All of them. There was the cat, Felicity the cat, and there was Julia, and there was the white fox. And they came to this great pool of water, this lake, this pond. And when they looked down into it, they could see the sun shining its reflection back up. But sometimes when you look into water, I don't know if you've ever done this, if you've looked into a lake, especially if you're standing on a rock that's higher over the water and you're doing that, and that's what Felicity and Julia and the Kitsune fox was doing. I got to learn to say that right well. This is Althea's picture. Isn't it amazing? That's not the whole picture. The whole picture that I got was this. But I figured that it didn't print out very well. There she is. Look at that cute little face. Look at her cheeks. So there she was. They were leaning over and they were looking at the sun into the pool and they fell in. All of them, all three. They fell in. But when they fell in, they found that the whole world kind of went whoop. And as they fell in, they fell out and they were in this completely different place. It was a place where no one had ever been before. Now, when they had left the house, it had been morning. It wasn't even 10 o'clock in the morning. But in this new place that they were in, it was already sunset. And there was someone waving at them. The sun, they could barely see him because the sun was so bright as it was slowly sinking down. The sun was so bright, they looked and they saw someone waving at them and going, hello. And what do you do if you're in a strange world that you don't know and someone says, hello? Now, if they were like, hello, you might run the other way, but this was a hello. And so they started to make their way towards this person that was waving at them. They admired the colors, the beautiful colors of the sky and the clouds that were scudding along. And as they got closer and closer to this person, the person smiled. They could see his face. It was Dr. Evelyn. Dr. Evelyn was a doctor, and he had a beautiful moustache. And he said, welcome. I haven't seen you here before. Now, I'd like to introduce you to this wonderful place that you've arrived in. And that is the end of part 1 of the story, because I have no more pictures. No! So what are we going to do? You're going to have to send me some more pictures so I can finish this story off next week. Oh my gosh, it's like old-fashioned TV when the programs only come on once a week and you got to wait a whole week to see the next episode. My gosh, you're going to be so excited by the time next week comes around. I'm sorry. I ran out of pictures. These are all the pictures. I even saved 2 from last week because I had so many last week, but this week I didn't have so many. Yes, no. So you're going to have to send me in even more pictures so I can continue this story. And then I'm going to have to watch this story again so I can remember how it went and do a little quick recap. Anyway, what time is it? We got time for... Ooh, I don't think we got time for one more story. Not really. Would you like to hear another story? I'll leave it up to you guys. I can do one more story. I love this delay. It's like you're typing. No, go away. We got things to do in the rain. All right, I'm going to tell you another story because it's pouring out with rain. The rain today is persistent. We could say that. In fact, the rain all week has been persistent. And Mo has not liked it at all because there's been a lot of grumbly skies, which makes Mo all panty. And she doesn't like that at all. She's over there being very sad. What does that say? That's Joey. Oh, yes, another story. Tell. Yes, all right. Papa Joe, hey. Oh, that's right, the Picky Princess. That's good job, Joey. See, my mind, when I'm telling stories, goes... Once upon a time, this is for all you girls out there, and you might not... So the youngest girls that are out there, this story is something that you probably won't appreciate until you're at college. So I want you to remember this story, okay? I'm only going to tell it once, and you have to remember it. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, there was a king and queen who wanted a child. Now, the king obviously wanted a son, so the son could rule the kingdom. When he passed away, he could hand it down to his heir. But the years went by, and the years went by, and the years went by, and even though the king and queen had a lot of fun trying to make a child, it was years before the queen's belly started to get bigger and bigger. And when the child was born, it was a little girl. And the king had waited so long, he didn't care anymore. And there was this little tiny baby girl. And they loved this child so much. They gave this child everything they could, which isn't always a good idea, is it? The first thing they got was a gold pacifier, a gold dummy. You know what they call them? Dummies. They call pacifiers dummies in the UK, and because it stops you from talking, it makes you dumb, so they call them dummies. And the gold pacifier, it would only work if she was like laying on her back, because she could just suck on it. But if she was on her side, the gold was so heavy it would just pull itself out of her mouth. It was terrible. She had the softest, silkiest blankets and sheets that she could sleep on. Oh, she slept so well. She had a wardrobe filled with dresses, blue dresses, and she had another one with the red ones, another one with the yellow ones, another one with the multicolored dresses. She even had a pony, not just one pony, but 3 ponies and a horse. Yeah. She wanted a pet snake, but her mother put her foot down there. She was spoiled rotten. And do you think that she became a nice, well-adjusted young girl? No, she was a spoiled brat. She was a terrible child. Oh, Daddy, can I have? Well, of course you can, my dear. Oh, Mummy, can I have? Well, of course you can, my dear. Oh, thank you. And off she would go. They gave her everything that she wanted. Well, when she became that marrying age, the king said, "Oh, my dear, it's time for you to be married. And our country is very small, and so we're going to marry you to the prince in the neighboring kingdom, which is also very small. And together we shall unite our kingdoms, and then we shall have a nice-sized kingdom, and we shall be able to defend ourselves." Daddy, you're going to marry me to Prince Backward Pants? That's not his real name. But he wears his pants on backwards. He wears his trousers the wrong way around, Daddy. I don't want to marry someone that wears... And he's got this strange-looking face. It's all lopsided. And his breath is halitosis. They call it halitosis because it smells like toes that have been toasted after being mashed up in mud and briar. It's disgusting. I'm not going to marry him, Daddy. But, my dear, we need to make our kingdom stronger. There's talk about other countries invading us. We need to marry you to someone. Well, I don't want to marry Prince Backward Pants. He wears his pants backwards, Daddy. Well, what do you suggest we do? We'll have a party. And we'll invite all of the warriors, all of the dukes, all of the lords, well, their sons, the ones that are eligible, all of the princes, and I shall choose myself which one I shall marry. Well, I suppose we could do that, my dear. And so invitations were sent out. Thank you, Daddy. They went out all over the kingdom, beyond the kingdom, to other kingdoms. The day was set and people started to arrive. This is another summer story. Everyone arrived. And now, in these days, in these long, long, long ago days, they didn't have the same kind of... We have coaches now with air conditioning and toilets in the back. There was none of that back in those days. You rode on horseback if you're a warrior. If you were a prince, you would have a carriage. And that was bouncy and not so comfortable. And there were no toilets in there. If you needed to pee, you go in the trees on the way. There was no air conditioning. The air conditioning was like you pull the strap on the windows and down the windows come. So when they arrived at the castle, some of them having travelled for quite a few days, they were hot and dusty and sweaty, and they smelt rather bad. And of course, the king had all these barrels of water set out for their guests to arrive and wash themselves with. And they would start with... You always start with your face, because if you start lower down and work your way back up, by the time you get to your face, there's no way you want to put your face in that water. No. Ugh, disgusting. Well, she went out there and she looked at all these young men that were standing around. Oh, hello, princess. How are you doing? She looked at them and looked, oh, they're disgusting. They're all sweaty and smelly. And, oh, no. She went inside and talked to her dad. Daddy, they smell so bad. Well, they're just washing up, my dear. Go back outside and look at them. And by the time she went back outside, they were cleaning themselves up and drying themselves off. I mean, there were sweat stains on some of these people that went in places you don't want to hear about. But there were others that were starting to dry themselves off, but they had big hairy chests, big hairy armpits. And she's like, oh, my gosh. It looked like a bear just died on his chest. It laid there. It's disgusting. I don't want to. But her father was persistent, and she had to pick. I want to marry the most powerful one of all, but who's the they're all smelling disgusting. And then she had an idea. She went inside the castle and she went up to her dad and she said, "Daddy, I know who I want to get married to." "Well, who is it you want to get married to?" "The son." "Well, they're all someone's sons. Which one is it? You can't marry all of them, my dear." "No, Daddy, the sun." "What do you mean, the sun? The orb in the sky?" "Yes, Daddy, there's the sun up in the sky. It's so powerful it can make all these beautiful things and trees and flowers grow. But it can be so powerful it can make all those men smelly and sweaty. It's disgusting. It can cause droughts. It's the most powerful thing in the world, Daddy, and I want to marry the most powerful thing in the world." "But you can't marry the sun." "It's the sun, my dear." "Daddy, I want to marry the sun." "But you can't." "Daddy, I want to marry the..." "But my dear Daddy, I'll see if I can find out how you can marry the sun." "Thank you, Daddy." And she ran off outside to look at the sun. She went to the blacksmith first, who made her some special slitted glasses so that she could, not wise, but yeah, it's better than just staring at the sun. And she would look up at the sun and say, "Oh, my son, you're my fiance now. We're going to be married soon. It's going to be marvelous." And then a cloud floated in front of the sun and blocked the sun from her view. "Get out of the way. I'm talking to my fiance and you just stroll in front and you made everything go cold and chilly and you've dimmed the light." "No way." She ran back in the castle. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, I don't want to marry the sun anymore." "Oh, thank goodness you've come to your senses." Yes. I want to marry the cloud." "The McClouds? But there's 3 of them. You have to pick one. Which one of them?" "No, not the McClouds, Daddy. The cloud that obscured the sun. It made everything go cooler and it made everything go darker. And the clouds, they bring the rain that actually gives life to all of the plants and things that the sun could dry up so horribly. Yeah, the clouds are so much nicer. And that sun was getting too hot on my skin, and the cloud came and protected me. I want to marry the cloud, Daddy." "But it's a cloud, a big white fluffy thing in it." "Daddy, I want to marry a cloud." "But my dear Daddy, I want to marry..." "But my dear Daddy, I shall find a way of seeing if you can marry a cloud, my dear." "Thank you, Daddy." "You're welcome." And off she went. She went outside and she looked up at that cloud. And the wind caught the cloud. Now it was getting towards the end of the day now. When the cloud started to roll around, the cloud started to change colour and change shape. "You're an artistic cloud. Oh, I do love artists. They're so much fun to be with than most other people." "But what's happening? You're being broken up. What's breaking you up? It must be the wind. The wind is breaking you up. The wind, leave the cloud." "Oh my gosh! The wind is..." "Daddy!" She ran back into the castle. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy! I don't want to marry the cloud anymore." "Oh, thank goodness! I'm glad you've come to your senses. So who do you want to marry?" "I want to marry the wind." "The wind? The wind?" "Yes, Daddy, the wind." "But you can't even see the wind." "But I can feel it. I can see it when the trees move. I know it's there. I can feel it on my face." "But my dear, you can't marry the wind." "I want to marry the wind." "But my dear Daddy, Daddy?" "Okay, I'll find out how you can marry the wind." "Thank you, Daddy." And she went off outside to play in the wind. And the wind caressed her face and her hair. And she thought it was wonderful, but she wanted to make sure that the wind was the most powerful thing of all. After all, it had only broken up a cloud. I mean, that can't be too hard. But there were some mountains in the distance. So she told the wind to break down the mountains in the distance. Wear them down, knock them down. Be the most powerful wind you can be and knock those mountains down. But of course, she saw that the wind couldn't. The wind went up and over the hills, just like the clouds, just like the birds. The mountain. She ran back inside the castle, went up to her father. Daddy, I've been very silly." "Yes, your choices are not always the best ones. I've decided I don't want to marry the wind after all." "Well, that's very good. And you're not marrying the clouds or the sun?" No, that was just... Oh, a young mind, it just goes all over the place, doesn't it?" "Yes, it does sometimes. So who are you going to marry?" "The mountain, Daddy." "The mountain, is that one of the warriors' names?" "Daddy, don't be silly. The mountains over in the distance, over to the east. But the sun rises over them. The mountains, Daddy. I want to marry the mountains. They're steady and they're strong. The wind couldn't blow them down. But they're mountains. Daddy, I'll send 4 horsemen to the 4 corners of the world to see if you can marry a mountain. Thank you, Daddy. You're welcome. She got on a horse and she rode to the mountains. And when she got there, the sun was getting close to the horizon. The rocks were warm. Oh, look at you. You hold the heat for me. Oh, and you have these caves as well to protect me from the silly rain and the silly sun when it gets too wet or too hot. You're marvelous. She went into one of the caves and she heard something in there. What is that? What's that noise? And then she saw a rat. A rat, and it was sharpening its teeth. It was chewing at the rocks. The rat was only about this big, unless you count the tail, in which case it was, it was this big. It was a big old rat. Rat, you're eating my fiance. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Rat, you're disgusting. You're eating my... Oh, Ratty. The rat is eating the mountain. The mountain was more strong than the wind. The wind was more strong than the cloud, and the cloud was more strong than the sun. So the rat must be the most powerful of all. She went over and picked the rat up by its tail. Oh, hello. And she laid the rat in her hand. Oh, you're going to be married. Ow, don't bite. Well, I suppose all boys need training. And she took the rat, climbed back upon a horse, and rode back to the castle. Daddy, I want to marry this rat. It's a rat. Yes, Daddy, I want to marry it. All right. And so the young princess wasn't married to a warrior or a knight or a duke or an earl or a lord or son thereof. She was married to the rat. And you might wonder why on earth her father allowed her to marry a rat. And the simple answer is he's a wise man. And he knew that his daughter was not the first, and neither would she be the last, to marry a rat. The end. Thanks for suggesting that story, Joey. I do like it, and I hope you do too. I know the squibs are there, and I did their pictures, Papa Joe. So everyone, it's been absolutely fabulous having you here. I've really enjoyed your company. I hope you've enjoyed mine too. Thank you, Sarah. Where does this picky princess come? No, it's not a literary story, as far as I know. I got it from, I was in Wales, and I was talking to this English woman whose name was Helen Wales, and she told me that it was a English story that she had come across. And so I'm going to get back to her to find out what her sources were. Do I have a totem? Oh, a Tompton story. No, I don't have a Tompton story. Pretty cagey. What's cagey? The very end part of that story is I added that bit, to be honest. That's not in the original version. But when I first heard it, I only heard that story once, and it stuck with me. And I knew the real end to the story. As soon as I heard it, I was like, that's not how it ends. The king knows why she marries the rat. If that's what you're referring to. It is a version of the stonecutter. It is a version of the stonecutter. There are many different variants, but the thing I like about this, and the woman in the vinegar bottle, right? And the thing I love about this is that she doesn't end up at the back, at the beginning, which is what the stonecutter's all about and what the vinegar bottle's all about. This story is a little bit different from that, but I just love it to death. It's such a fun story. Yeah, halitosis. You like that? Thanks, Sarah. All right, so remember, I need more pictures to finish off my story from earlier because we didn't get to finish it. Here is Julia and her self-portrait. She's one of the squibs that Papa Joe was mentioning. Thank you, Julia, for sending in that picture. Thank you, Liam, for sending in your kitsune. I love the kitsune. I like kitsune stories. Some of them are really very adulty. Oh, there goes the thunder again. Here's Felicity in Scotland. This is her picture of the sun and the cat and the house. I love that. And we've got to find out what happens to them all. I mean, kind of funny that the cat would jump into the water. I don't think she did. I think she just fell into the water. And which way does this go up? So there's I have it this way, but I think it's upside down. No, this is the right way up. So this is the pool of water with the sun reflecting in it. And this was done by Althea. And Althea is 6 now, but when she did this, it was 5. And there's Althea right there, looking very proud of her work. And she should be too. It's really cool. I love it. Reflections in the water. And then, of course, Miss Renee's gentleman, who's going to show our heroes of our story what happens next. And then, of course, this is another one of the squibs. This is Evelyn's. But Mr. Evelyn, Dr. Evelyn, has a moustache. So he has, I think that's a fine name for a doctor. Dr. Evelyn. So send me more pictures for next week so I can finish off this tale. We need some things for these people to do. So draw a thing. Don't draw any more people because we've got all the people that we need right now. Draw things and send them to me so I can make up a story. Oh, I'm asking for trouble with this. I should always wrap it up. Kind of creepy at the end of Married to a Rat. That's not creepy. It's funny. That's what happens when you get what you wish for, right? I think that was the original message of the story. Be careful what you wish for. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this wet and thunderous in New London, New Hampshire Wednesday afternoon. I hope you have had a great time. I hope you've enjoyed the stories. And remember, these stories are not my stories. These stories are so old, they belong to everyone. So if you liked any of those stories, tell them. If you enjoyed The Naughty Boy, tell it. You probably won't tell that one. That's more of a story to tell. But if you like, what were the other ones that I did? I can't even remember. I have to look at the video at the end of this. Hopeless. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully I'll see you on Friday at 2 o'clock right here. Same bat channel, same bat place. Join me at 2 o'clock for my conversation, not my conversation, so with my Friday with friends. And Sandy, tell Renee to send me some pictures, okay? Okay. Love you all. Take care. Bye.